Hey guys, Moonwater here. Terraria has released yet another update, the 1.4.3 Don't Starve crossover update. In today's video, I'll go over all of the new changes that the new patch has brought, including all of the new items, the new vanity, the new boss, and more. Also, this video will have all of the updated information from all of the recent hotfix updates, including the new balance changes. If you enjoyed today's video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. With that out of the way, let's get into the video. First, I'll be going over all the new items from this update, including all of the weapons and accessories. Up first is the Tentacle Spike, which is a pre-hard mode melee weapon. There's nothing too special about this weapon, and it can be obtained relatively early on in the game, but I think it's really outclassed by others. One thing to note, I guess, is that when you hit an enemy, it embeds spikes in them, dealing some damage. I think the biggest weakness of this weapon is the fact that it is not auto-swing. Overall, it's a solid early game weapon if you do manage to get your hands on one. The Bat is another pre-hard mode melee weapon and can also be obtained in the early game. The Bat is big and does a pretty good amount of damage, but it is really slow. One unique thing about this weapon is that each time you hit an enemy, it heals you for 1 HP. Even though this weapon does have a lifesteal effect, I don't really think it's worth grinding for, but if you do manage to get one, it's an okay early game weapon to have. Abigail's Flower is a pre-hard mode summon weapon. Like the Desert Tiger, Abigail can only be summoned once, but when spawned multiple times, her damage and speed will increase. I think this weapon is actually really good, especially for how easy it is to obtain. Even though the base damage is pretty low, the AI and speed and the fact that the damage increases when you summon it multiple times more than makes up for it. People have even been saying that she's viable in early hard mode. Abigail's Flower is a really good pre-hard mode summon weapon that you should definitely go for. The Pneumatic Horn is a ranged weapon that is one of the weapons that is dropped by the new boss, the Deerclops. It converts bullets to random projectiles, each doing different amounts of damage. Now this can be an advantage or disadvantage. While you can use bad bullets and it will still have the same effect, you won't get the better effects of a good bullet, such as the Meteor Bullet, which can pierce enemies. The biggest weakness of the weapon is probably its range, as it loses speed pretty quickly and is affected by gravity. The Weather Pane is the mage weapon dropped by the Deerclops. It shoots out a tornado that deals damage to nearby enemies for a few seconds. The tornado is great at dealing with groups of enemies and even ignores 10 defense. There can only be one tornado shot out at once, however. I would say the Weather Pane is a good early game weapon for mages. The Hondius Shoutout is the summon weapon dropped by the Deerclops, and it is a sentry. It is the only sentry weapon in pre-hard mode that is not obtained from the Old One's army. Not much else is too special about this weapon, but it has a nice range and is a good source of extra damage. Lucy the Axe is another drop from the Deerclops. It is tied for the second highest axe power in the game, and is in the same tier as the Molten Ham Axe. The unique thing about this item is that it has different interactions and occasionally displays a line of dialogue. Here are a few examples. The Hambat is a hard mode melee weapon and has a few unique quirks to it. First, after killing an enemy, it grants the Hearty Meal buff, which increases health regen for 7 seconds. The damage you deal with this weapon can also be increased based on your current food buff, going up to 65 damage. The Hambat is a pretty good weapon for early hard mode, and its unique buffs make it fun to use. The Bone Helm is the expert mode accessory drop from the Deerclops. Similar to that of the Volatile Gelatin and the Spore Sack, it periodically summons shadow hands that damages enemies. I don't know the exact number, but it seems to do around 20 damage, and I don't know if it's considered summon damage and if it increases with summoner armor. While it is an accessory, it is also considered a vanity item, and when equipped you wear what looks to be the skull of the Deerclops. The Magi Luminescence is a pre-hard mode accessory. Can be obtained early on in the game and provides a pretty nice speed boost and a light source. One of the main parts of this update was the addition of the new boss, the Deerclops. The Deerclops is a pre-hard mode boss that can be summoned using a deer thing, which is crafted with Lynx Fur, a lens, and Crimtane or Demonite ore at a demon altar. The summon can be used at any time of day, but only inside a snow biome. It can also be randomly spawned at midnight during a blizzard. The Deerclops has 4 different attacks. When you get close to him, he'll smash the ground and summon a wave of ice spikes. When you're too far away from him, he will throw chunks of ice in the air. He will also periodically stand still and roar, inflicting the slow debuff. Deerclops can also summon 5 shadow hands around you if you are above him for too long. In expert or master mode, he'll periodically summon shadow hands that move around. The hands are summoned more frequently the lower Deerclops is. Also, if you get too far from him, he will turn purple and become immune to any damage. The boss fight itself is relatively easy, and its attack pattern is nothing too complicated. Don't be fooled by the background gameplay. Those are my first few times fighting the boss, and in each of those attempts I still beat him. In terms of progression, you could probably fight Deerclops after the Eater of Worlds or Brain of Cthulhu. I think killing Skeletron before is not required, but you still can just to be safe. I will probably make a whole guide on this boss in the future, so be sure to subscribe if you do not want to miss out on that. The 1.4.3 update also added a few new vanity items. The Gentleman's set is crafted with silk, and the beard can be purchased from the stylist for 5 gold. The Firestarter set can also be crafted with silk. The garland is crafted using a variety of flowers. The umbrella has a 1-3 chance of being dropped by the Deerclops. The Deerclops mask has a 14% chance to drop from the Deerclops. There were also a few new pets added. The Glommer's flower summons a pet Glommer that has a 1% chance of being dropped by Derplings. Bernie's button summons a teddy bear, and it can be purchased from the princess for 25 gold. The monster meat summons a pigman and has a 0.1% chance of being dropped by crimson or corruption enemies. The eyebone summons Chester and has a 1 in 3 chance of being dropped by Deerclops. Chester can also act as a piggy bank. Deerclops' eyeball is the master mode pet drop from Deerclops and summons a mini version of him. There were also 4 new paintings added to the game, and each of them can be purchased from the traveling merchant for 1 gold. There were also 2 new food items added, and each of them give the Plenty Satisfied buff, which give medium improvements to stats. 2 new hairstyles were also added, and they are based on some characters from Don't Starve. The last major piece of content added to the update was the addition of a new secret world seed. When creating a world, if you type in constant or the constant as the world seed, you will generate a world that adds new mechanics to the world. I won't go over every single change because there are quite a few and it deserves its own video. One thing you can immediately notice is the change in colors, and it even becomes pitch black during nights. This can be changed however when equipped with a radio thing, which is dropped by the Deerclops. When you equip it, it will turn all of the colors back to normal, but when you equip it in a normal world, it will change all of the colors to that of the constant seed. When exploring the new seed, you can come across marble patches and spider biomes in the surface. There are many more changes that the seed adds, such as the addition of a hunger system, but I will go over all of those in my next video, so be sure to subscribe to not miss it. Those were all the changes added in the 1.4.3 Don't Starve crossover update. Be sure to comment down below your thoughts on this update, and if you think Terraria will receive any new updates in the future. I personally like this update quite a lot. I like the addition of the new boss and some of its drops. And in my opinion, I think this will be the last major content update, at least for a while, because they have hinted at this crossover a while back during like a Reddit Q&A. Thank you to those who made it this far to the end of the video. If you enjoy, be sure to leave a like and subscribe.